Good evening, I am Victoria. Today I will share the extraordinary story of Alexandra Westfield, which unfolds as follows. My brother stole my $3.2 million trust fund to finance his elaborate wedding celebration. When I discovered his theft, he demanded I serve cocktails at his reception to earn back a fraction of what he had taken. I refused and chose to rebuild my life from nothing instead. But the consequences of that decision transformed our entire family forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Alexandra Westfield possessed every advantage that privilege could provide, yet she remained remarkably grounded despite her extraordinary circumstances. At 28 years old, she had completed her graduate degree in sustainable architecture from Columbia University, and worked as a junior partner at Morrison Environmental Design, one of Manhattan's most prestigious green building firms. Her professional achievements reflected genuine talent rather than family connections, though her surname certainly opened doors that remained closed to others. The Westfield family legacy stretched back 4 generations in American business history. Alexandra's great-grandfather had established Westfield Industries in 1923, building a manufacturing empire that survived the Great Depression, expanded during World War II, and evolved into a diversified holding company worth approximately $800 million. The family maintained significant interests in renewable energy, sustainable manufacturing, and commercial real estate development across the northeastern United States. Alexandra's parents, Richard and Margaret Westfield, had structured their estate planning to ensure both children received substantial inheritances while maintaining family business continuity. Alexandra's trust fund, established when she turned 18, contained $3.2 million earmarked for her 30th birthday access. The fund represented her grandmother's specific bequest, recognizing Alexandra's academic achievements and professional dedication to environmental causes that aligned with the family's evolving business philosophy. Her older brother, Christopher Westfield, age 31, had followed a dramatically different path despite sharing identical advantages. Christopher possessed natural charisma and social connections that enabled him to move effortlessly through Manhattan's elite circles, but he struggled with sustained professional commitment and financial responsibility. His trust fund, slightly larger due to his birth order, had been depleted through a series of unsuccessful business ventures, luxury purchases, and lifestyle expenses that exceeded even his substantial allowances. The family dynamics had always favored Christopher's charm over Alexandra's substance. Richard and Margaret Westfield appreciated their son's ability to represent the family at social events and business gatherings, viewing his gregarious personality as an asset for maintaining important relationships. Alexandra's quieter approach to professional achievement received acknowledgement, but generated less enthusiasm from parents who valued networking and social presence above individual accomplishment. Christopher had recently become engaged to Vivian Ashford, daughter of a prominent investment banking family whose social standing rivaled the Westfields' business success. The engagement represented the culmination of Manhattan high society expectations, bringing together 2 established families whose union would create powerful business and social synergies. The wedding planning had consumed 18 months of intensive preparation, reflecting both families' determination to create an event worthy of their combined status and influence. Alexandra maintained a comfortable but modest lifestyle despite her family wealth, choosing to rent a renovated brownstone apartment in Brooklyn Heights rather than accepting her parents' offer to purchase a Manhattan penthouse. She drove a hybrid sedan instead of the luxury vehicles her family preferred, donated 30% of her salary to environmental causes, and lived according to principles that emphasized substance over appearance. Her approach to wealth reflected genuine values rather than performative modesty, though her family often interpreted her choices as rejection of their lifestyle and priorities. The professional environment at Morrison Environmental Design provided Alexandra with intellectual stimulation and meaningful work that aligned with her environmental passions. She specialized in designing commercial buildings that achieved carbon neutrality while maintaining economic viability for clients who ranged from progressive corporations to nonprofit organizations. Her projects had received recognition from architectural journals and environmental organizations, establishing her reputation as an emerging leader in sustainable design. Alexandra's personal relationships reflected her preference for authenticity over social convenience. Her closest friendships were with graduate school classmates who shared her professional interests and values, rather than debutante companions from her privileged background. She dated selectively, preferring relationships with substance over social advantages, though her family occasionally expressed disappointment about her failure to pursue connections with prominent families' eligible sons. The trust fund represented more than financial security for Alexandra. It symbolized independence and the ability to pursue her professional passion without compromising her principles for economic necessity. She had developed specific plans for utilizing the funds to establish her own sustainable architecture firm, focusing on affordable housing projects that would demonstrate how environmental responsibility could address social challenges while maintaining economic sustainability. Her vision for the architectural firm reflected years of careful planning and professional development. She intended to recruit talented colleagues who shared her commitment to environmental design, while building relationships with nonprofit organizations and progressive businesses that needed high-quality architectural services at accessible price points. The trust fund would provide the capital necessary to sustain operations during the initial years while establishing market presence and client relationships. Alexandra had scheduled meetings with business advisors and potential partners for the month following her 30th birthday, when trust fund access would enable her to begin implementing her entrepreneurial plans. She had completed preliminary market research, identified potential office locations, and developed financial projections that demonstrated how her firm could achieve profitability within 36 months while creating positive environmental and social impact. The anticipation of accessing her trust fund had sustained Alexandra through challenging periods in her current position, when corporate priorities sometimes conflicted with her environmental principles. The knowledge that she would soon possess the resources necessary to pursue her own vision provided motivation during projects that required compromising her ideals for client demands or company profitability. Family dinner conversations during recent months had increasingly focused on Christopher's wedding preparations, with detailed discussions of venue selection, catering arrangements, guest list management, and ceremonial traditions that would reflect both families' social expectations. Alexandra participated in these conversations cordially, while privately questioning the enormous expenses being incurred for a single day's celebration that could fund substantial charitable contributions or business investments. The wedding budget had escalated beyond initial projections as both families competed to demonstrate their sophistication and generosity. The ceremony would take place at the Metropolitan Club, followed by a reception at the Plaza Hotel's Grand Ballroom, accommodating 400 guests for an event that would cost approximately $2 million. The expenses included custom floral arrangements from the city's most exclusive florist, a renowned orchestra for the reception entertainment, and catering from a Michelin-starred restaurant that specialized in elaborate social events. Christopher's financial contributions to the wedding expenses had become a source of increasing tension within the family, as his depleted trust fund left him unable to cover his expected share of the costs. Richard and Margaret Westfield had assumed responsibility for most expenses, but they expected both children to contribute meaningfully to demonstrate their commitment to family traditions and social responsibilities. The pressure surrounding Christopher's wedding contributions had created an atmosphere of financial stress that seemed incongruous given the family's substantial wealth. Alexandra observed her parents' frustration with Christopher's inability to manage his resources responsibly, while simultaneously maintaining their expectation that the wedding would proceed according to their elaborate plans regardless of financial constraints. During the final months before her 30th birthday, Alexandra had begun receiving administrative correspondence from the trust fund management company regarding access procedures and documentation requirements. The communications reinforced her anticipation while requiring her to complete various legal and financial forms that would enable the transfer of funds to her personal accounts. The trust fund paperwork revealed the careful structure that her grandmother had established to ensure Alexandra would receive maximum benefit from the inheritance. The fund had been invested conservatively in diversified portfolios that generated steady returns while preserving capital, reflecting her grandmother's wisdom about long-term wealth preservation, and the importance of financial independence for young women. Alexandra's grandmother had included personal letters with the trust documentation, expressing her hopes that the inheritance would enable Alexandra to pursue meaningful work while maintaining the family's commitment to social responsibility. The letters emphasized the importance of using wealth to create positive change, rather than merely maintaining comfortable lifestyles, reflecting values that had attracted Alexandra to environmental design and sustainable business practices. The approaching access to her trust fund had begun influencing Alexandra's daily decisions and long-term planning in subtle but significant ways. She had started networking more aggressively with potential clients and collaborators, knowing that she would soon possess the resources necessary to make firm commitments about business development and project timelines. This foundation of family dynamics, personal ambitions, and financial expectations would soon be shattered by a betrayal that would test every principle Alexandra held dear, while forcing her to discover capabilities she never knew she possessed. The comfortable world of trust funds and family support was about to collapse, creating the catalyst for a transformation that would reveal her true strength and potential. The stage was now set for the shocking discovery that would change everything Alexandra believed about family loyalty, financial security, and her own capacity for resilience in the face of devastating betrayal. Her journey from privilege to self-reliance was about to begin in the most unexpected and painful way possible. The morning of March 15th began with the same routine that had structured Alexandra's life for the past 3 years. She awakened at 6:30 in her Brooklyn Heights apartment, prepared her customary green tea while reviewing architectural drawings from the previous day's work, and checked her email for project updates and client communications. The familiar rhythm of her morning provided stability and focus that enabled her to approach each day with purpose and professional dedication. Among the routine correspondence, one email immediately captured her attention due to its sender and subject line. The message originated from Harrison and Associates Trust Management, the firm that had administered her grandmother's trust fund for the past decade. The subject line read, "Urgent, trust fund account irregularities requiring immediate attention," which created instant concern about potential administrative complications that might delay her approaching 30th birthday access to the funds. Alexandra opened the email with mild apprehension, expecting to encounter routine bureaucratic issues that would require additional documentation or clarification of legal procedures. Instead, she discovered a communication that would fundamentally alter her understanding of her family, her financial security, and her future possibilities. The message requested her immediate presence at their Manhattan offices to discuss significant unauthorized transactions that had occurred within her trust account during the previous 6 months. Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The phrase unauthorized transactions created a moment of cognitive dissonance as Alexandra attempted to process its implications. Her trust fund had been structured with multiple layers of protection, specifically designed to prevent unauthorized access or withdrawal until her 30th birthday. The legal documentation included specific provisions that restricted access to designated trustees and required multiple authorizations for any modifications to the fund's structure or distributions. Rather than waiting for additional information through email correspondence, Alexandra immediately telephoned Harrison and Associates to request clarification about the nature of these irregularities. The receptionist connected her with Thomas Harrison, the senior partner who had personally managed her grandmother's estate planning and maintained oversight of the trust fund administration since its establishment. Thomas Harrison's tone during their telephone conversation conveyed both professional concern and personal sympathy, as he explained that he preferred to discuss the situation in person due to its complexity and sensitivity. He scheduled an emergency meeting for 11 o'clock that morning, emphasizing the importance of her immediate attention to matters that could not be adequately addressed through remote communication. The subway journey from Brooklyn Heights to Midtown Manhattan provided 45 minutes for Alexandra to contemplate potential explanations for the trust fund irregularities. Her initial concerns focused on administrative errors, investment losses, or bureaucratic complications that might delay but not prevent her access to the inheritance. The possibility of deliberate fraud or theft seemed inconceivable given the legal protections and family oversight that governed the trust fund structure. Harrison and Associates occupied a prestigious suite on the 42nd floor of a classic Manhattan office building that housed various legal and financial firms serving wealthy families and established institutions. The office environment reflected conservative elegance and professional discretion that wealthy clients expected from their advisors, with leather furniture, mahogany paneling, and original artwork that suggested both prosperity and reliability. Thomas Harrison appeared genuinely distressed as he welcomed Alexandra into his private office and offered her coffee while explaining that their conversation would address matters that no family should have to confront. His preliminary comments suggested that the trust fund irregularities involved intentional actions rather than administrative mistakes, which began shifting Alexandra's concerns from inconvenience toward genuine alarm about potential losses. The detailed explanation that Thomas Harrison provided over the following hour revealed a pattern of sophisticated financial manipulation that had systematically depleted Alexandra's trust fund through a series of transactions that appeared legitimate on the surface but violated the fundamental legal structure that protected her inheritance. Someone with intimate knowledge of the trust fund administration had exploited technical loopholes and authorization procedures to transfer substantial amounts to external accounts. The unauthorized transactions had begun 8 months earlier, with relatively small withdrawals that would not trigger automatic oversight mechanisms built into the trust fund management system. These initial transfers totaled approximately $200,000 and had been justified through documentation that claimed emergency family medical expenses requiring immediate access to trust fund resources for Alexandra's benefit. Subsequent withdrawals had escalated in both frequency and amount as the perpetrator became more confident in their ability to manipulate the authorization systems without detection. The largest single transaction, completed just 6 weeks earlier, had transferred $1.4 million to an account registered under Alexandra's name, but administered through a financial institution that she had never contacted or authorized to handle her assets. Thomas Harrison explained that the sophisticated nature of these transactions suggested extensive knowledge of trust fund administration procedures combined with access to confidential documentation that would normally be restricted to family members and designated legal representatives. The perpetrator had successfully forged Alexandra's signature on multiple authorization documents while providing personal information that convinced bank officials of their legitimacy. The total amount of unauthorized withdrawals exceeded $2.8 million, leaving Alexandra's trust fund with less than $400,000 of its original $3.2 million value. The remaining funds were insufficient to support the architectural firm establishment that she had planned, while the depleted inheritance represented a devastating loss of the financial independence that had guided her career and personal decisions for years. As Thomas Harrison continued explaining the technical details of the fraud, Alexandra experienced a profound shift in her understanding of family relationships and personal security. The sophisticated nature of the theft indicated that someone with intimate access to confidential family financial information had deliberately betrayed her trust while maintaining normal family interactions throughout the period when they were systematically stealing her inheritance. The realization that the perpetrator must be a family member created emotional devastation that exceeded even the financial impact of the theft. Alexandra had maintained faith in family loyalty despite observing Christopher's financial irresponsibility and her parents' favoritism toward his social success over her professional achievements. The possibility that someone she loved and trusted had deliberately stolen her future seemed incomprehensible, yet increasingly undeniable. Thomas Harrison's investigation had identified the external account that received the transferred funds as being registered to Christopher Westfield through a financial services company that specialized in facilitating large transactions for wealthy clients planning major purchases or investments. The timing of the withdrawals corresponded precisely with the escalating expenses associated with Christopher's wedding preparations, suggesting a direct connection between the trust fund theft and his inability to finance his share of the elaborate celebration. The evidence presented by Thomas Harrison included bank statements, transfer authorizations, and communication records that documented Christopher's systematic exploitation of his access to family financial information, while maintaining the appearance of normal fraternal relationships with Alexandra. He had attended family dinners, participated in casual conversations about her career plans, and express supportive interest in her architectural firm aspirations, while simultaneously stealing the resources that would have enabled those dreams. Alexandra's initial response to this revelation involved a complex mixture of disbelief, anger, and profound sadness about the destruction of family relationships that had provided emotional foundation throughout her life. The betrayal represented not only financial theft but also the violation of trust and loyalty that she had believed formed the basis of family bonds despite their differences and occasional conflicts. The legal options available for recovering the stolen funds required pursuing criminal charges against Christopher while simultaneously filing civil lawsuits that would expose the family's private financial affairs to public scrutiny. Thomas Harrison explained that successful prosecution would likely result in Christopher facing significant prison time while destroying his engagement, career prospects, and social standing within their elite social circles. The decision about whether to pursue legal action placed Alexandra in an impossible position between seeking justice for the theft and protecting family relationships that had already been irreparably damaged by Christopher's betrayal. Pursuing prosecution would create public scandal that would humiliate her parents and destroy Christopher's future, while allowing the theft to go unpunished would enable him to benefit from his crimes while leaving her without resources to pursue her professional aspirations. Thomas Harrison advised Alexandra to take several days to consider her options while he completed additional investigation into the possibility of recovering funds through civil procedures that might avoid criminal prosecution. He suggested that family intervention might persuade Christopher to return the stolen money voluntarily, though his experience with similar cases indicated that such voluntary restitution rarely occurred without legal pressure. The return journey to Brooklyn Heights provided time for Alexandra to process the emotional and practical implications of discovering that her brother had stolen her future while maintaining the pretense of family loyalty and support. The familiar subway routine that had provided structure and comfort during thousands of previous trips now felt surreal and disconnected from the devastating reality that her life had been fundamentally altered by betrayal. Alexandra's apartment, which had represented sanctuary and independence, now reminded her of the financial vulnerability that Christopher's theft had created. The rent, utilities, and living expenses that she had managed comfortably through her salary would continue requiring payment regardless of her lost inheritance, while her dreams of establishing an architectural firm had been shattered by her brother's selfish actions. The evening brought a flood of memories from childhood and adolescence, as Alexandra recalled countless instances when Christopher had demonstrated casual disregard for other people's belongings and boundaries. The pattern of taking whatever he wanted without consideration for consequences had manifested in small ways throughout their shared upbringing, but she had never imagined that his sense of entitlement would extend to stealing her inheritance for his wedding expenses. The motivational dimension of this devastating discovery lay not in the betrayal itself, but in Alexandra's emerging recognition that her previous dependence on family wealth and inherited security had prevented her from developing the resilience and self-reliance that would now become essential for rebuilding her life according to her own values and capabilities. The trust fund theft had inadvertently freed Alexandra from the comfortable assumptions about financial security that had influenced her career choices and personal decisions. While the immediate impact was devastating, the forced independence would ultimately enable her to discover capabilities and strength that might never have emerged if her privileged circumstances had continued unchanged. This crisis represented the beginning of Alexandra's transformation from someone who had never faced genuine adversity into a person who would need to create success through her own efforts rather than inherited advantages. The journey ahead would test every aspect of her character while revealing potential that had remained dormant during her comfortable and protected life. The stage was now set for Alexandra to confront Christopher about his betrayal while determining how she would respond to the choice between seeking justice and protecting family relationships. Her decisions in the coming days would establish the foundation for either rebuilding trust through forgiveness or pursuing independence through complete separation from the family that had failed to protect her interests. The transformation from privilege to self-reliance was about to accelerate as Alexandra faced the most difficult decisions of her life, while discovering whether she possessed the strength necessary to rebuild her future without the safety net that had always provided security and confidence. Alexandra spent the following evening developing a strategic approach for confronting Christopher about the trust fund theft, while maintaining emotional control during what would inevitably become one of the most difficult conversations of her life. The evidence provided by Thomas Harrison eliminated any possibility of misunderstanding or alternative explanations, yet she recognized the importance of giving Christopher an opportunity to acknowledge his actions and potentially make voluntary restitution before pursuing legal remedies. The decision to confront Christopher privately before involving their parents reflected Alexandra's desire to preserve some possibility of family reconciliation, while protecting her parents from the immediate shock of discovering their son's criminal behavior. She understood that Christopher's theft would devastate Richard and Margaret Westfield, who had invested tremendous emotional energy and financial resources in their son's success despite his pattern of irresponsible decision-making. Alexandra scheduled the confrontation for Saturday morning at Christopher's Upper East Side apartment, which he shared with Vivienne in a luxury building that their combined family resources had enabled them to afford. The timing would provide privacy for their discussion while ensuring that Christopher would be relatively fresh and alert rather than distracted by work obligations or social commitments that might interfere with his ability to process the seriousness of their conversation. The preparation for this confrontation required Alexandra to organize her emotional responses and strategic objectives, while maintaining focus on the practical outcomes that she needed to achieve, rather than allowing anger and betrayal to overwhelm her judgment. She recognized that Christopher's response to being confronted would likely determine whether any possibility existed for resolving the situation through family cooperation rather than legal action. Alexandra arrived at Christopher's building at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, having spent considerable time selecting appropriate clothing and presentation that would convey both professional seriousness and family connection. Her appearance needed to communicate that she understood the gravity of the situation, while maintaining the dignity and composure necessary for productive dialogue, rather than emotional confrontation. Christopher's apparent surprise at her unannounced visit suggested that he had not anticipated being discovered or confronted about the trust fund theft. His initial greeting maintained the casual family tone that had characterized their recent interactions, though Alexandra observed subtle signs of nervousness that indicated he might suspect the purpose of her visit. Vivienne was absent, having departed earlier for wedding planning activities with her mother and sisters. The apartment's decoration reflected the expensive tastes and lifestyle expectations that Christopher and Vivienne had maintained, despite his depleted financial resources. Alexandra observed numerous luxury items and recent purchases that appeared inconsistent with someone facing genuine financial constraints, suggesting that the stolen trust fund money had been used not only for wedding expenses but also for maintaining their elevated standard of living. Alexandra began the conversation by explaining that she had received concerning information about her trust fund from Thomas Harrison, and wanted to give Christopher an opportunity to provide his perspective before drawing any conclusions about what had occurred. This approach avoided immediate accusations while establishing that she possessed specific knowledge about unauthorized transactions that required explanation. Christopher's initial response involved feigning ignorance about any trust fund irregularities, while expressing sympathy for Alexandra's concerns, and offering to help her investigate potential administrative errors or fraudulent activity by external parties. His performance was sufficiently convincing that someone without definitive evidence might have been persuaded that he was genuinely surprised and concerned about the reported problems. However, Alexandra possessed comprehensive documentation of Christopher's involvement in the unauthorized transactions, including bank records that clearly identified him as the recipient of transferred funds. When she presented this evidence, Christopher's demeanor shifted dramatically from concerned brother to defensive adversary, as he realized that continued deception would be futile. The acknowledgement phase of their conversation revealed the sophisticated rationalization that Christopher had developed to justify his theft of Alexandra's inheritance. He argued that the trust fund money represented family resources that should be available for important family events, particularly weddings that would enhance the Westfield family's social standing and business relationships. His perspective suggested genuine belief that his actions were reasonable rather than criminal. Christopher's explanation emphasized his conviction that Alexandra's trust fund was excessive for someone with her modest lifestyle and career focus, while his wedding represented an investment in family prestige that would benefit everyone through enhanced social connections and business opportunities. He expressed frustration that their parents expected him to contribute financially to wedding expenses, despite his depleted trust fund, arguing that Alexandra's resources should naturally supplement family needs. The most shocking aspect of Christopher's justification involved his assertion that Alexandra's career plans for establishing an architectural firm were impractical and unlikely to succeed, making her trust fund an underutilized family asset that could generate greater value through supporting his wedding and subsequent business ventures. His dismissive attitude toward her professional capabilities and entrepreneurial vision revealed profound disrespect that extended far beyond the financial theft. Christopher's response to Alexandra's demand for immediate restitution demonstrated the complete absence of remorse or recognition that his actions had caused legitimate harm. Instead of acknowledging the severity of his betrayal, he became increasingly aggressive in defending his right to use family resources for purposes that he considered more important than Alexandra's individual plans and objectives. The escalation of their confrontation reached a critical moment when Christopher suggested that Alexandra should consider his actions as an opportunity to develop greater independence and self-reliance, rather than depending on inherited wealth for her professional success. This perspective revealed his complete failure to understand that trust fund theft represented a fundamental violation of family loyalty and legal boundaries, rather than helpful encouragement for personal growth. Alexandra's growing anger at Christopher's refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing or express genuine remorse led her to explicitly state that she intended to pursue criminal charges and civil recovery procedures unless he immediately began returning the stolen funds. This ultimatum represented her final attempt to resolve the situation through family cooperation before involving law enforcement and the judicial system. Christopher's response to this ultimatum exceeded even Alexandra's worst expectations for callous disregard of family relationships and legal consequences. Rather than expressing concern about potential prosecution or attempting to negotiate restitution arrangements, he became hostile and threatening while insisting that Alexandra would never pursue legal action because it would destroy the family's reputation and social standing. The conversation reached its breaking point when Christopher argued that Alexandra's threat to involve law enforcement proved her selfishness and lack of family loyalty, suggesting that her willingness to pursue criminal charges demonstrated greater moral failure than his theft of her inheritance. This complete reversal of moral responsibility revealed the depth of his entitlement and inability to accept accountability for his actions. Christopher's final position involved an ultimatum of his own that would define the terms of their ongoing relationship and family dynamics. He informed Alexandra that he expected her attendance at his wedding ceremony and reception, where she would demonstrate family unity and support for his marriage despite their financial disagreements. His expectation that she would participate in celebrating an event financed through her stolen inheritance represented the ultimate expression of his arrogance and disrespect. The most outrageous element of Christopher's demands involved his insistence that Alexandra serve as a member of the reception staff during the wedding celebration, helping to coordinate guest services and manage beverage service throughout the evening. He justified this requirement by arguing that her participation as service staff would enable her to contribute meaningfully to the wedding, while earning a modest payment that would begin compensating her for the trust fund money that had been used for wedding expenses. This proposal to make Alexandra work as serving staff at her own brother's wedding, funded by her stolen inheritance, represented such an extraordinary level of cruelty and humiliation that she initially assumed he was not serious. However, Christopher's continued explanation of the specific duties he expected her to perform made clear that he genuinely believed this arrangement was reasonable and appropriate. Christopher's rationale for requiring Alexandra to work at his wedding reception included his conviction that manual labor would teach her valuable lessons about earning money through effort rather than relying on inherited wealth. He suggested that the experience would prepare her for the financial independence that she would need to develop now that her trust fund was no longer available for her architectural firm plans. The conversation concluded with Christopher's statement that Alexandra had 1 week to decide whether she would accept his terms for participating in the wedding or face complete exclusion from family events and relationships. He warned that their parents would support his position because they understood the importance of family unity during significant celebrations, particularly weddings that represented major social and business opportunities for the entire family. Alexandra left Christopher's apartment with absolute clarity about the choice she faced between accepting humiliation and abuse or pursuing justice through legal action that would destroy family relationships permanently. The confrontation had eliminated any remaining hope for resolving the situation through compromise or voluntary cooperation, while revealing that Christopher's sense of entitlement extended far beyond financial theft to include expectations of ongoing submission and servitude. The motivational dimension of this devastating confrontation emerged through Alexandra's recognition that Christopher's betrayal and subsequent demands had freed her from any remaining obligation to prioritize family relationships over personal dignity and justice. His actions had demonstrated that the family loyalty she had valued throughout her life was entirely one-sided and manipulative, rather than genuine mutual support and respect. The clear choice between humiliation and independence would force Alexandra to discover whether she possessed the courage and determination necessary to rebuild her life without family support while pursuing justice, despite the personal costs involved. The confrontation had eliminated comfortable options and forced her to choose between self-respect and family acceptance, creating the catalyst for transformation that would reveal her true character and capabilities. Christopher's shocking demands had inadvertently provided Alexandra with the motivation necessary to pursue complete independence, while demonstrating that her previous dependence on family approval and financial security had prevented her from developing the resilience and self-reliance that would now become essential for creating the life she truly wanted. The stage was now set for Alexandra's decision about whether to accept degradation and theft or fight for justice and independence, establishing the foundation for either continued victimization or the beginning of a transformation that would demonstrate the power of choosing dignity over comfort. The week following Alexandra's confrontation with Christopher marked the most transformative period of her life as she grappled with decisions that would determine not only her financial future, but also her personal integrity and relationship with every principle she had valued throughout her privileged upbringing. The choice between accepting humiliation and pursuing justice represented far more than a family dispute. It would define whether she possessed the courage to stand for what was right, despite devastating personal consequences. Alexandra spent the first 3 days after the confrontation analyzing her options with the methodical approach that had made her successful in architectural design. She created detailed written assessments of potential outcomes for each course of action, examining both immediate consequences and long-term implications for her career, finances, and personal relationships. This systematic analysis helped her maintain emotional equilibrium while processing the magnitude of the decision she faced. The option of accepting Christopher's demands would preserve family relationships and avoid the public scandal that criminal prosecution would create. Her parents would remain unaware of their son's theft, the wedding would proceed as planned, and the Westfield family's social standing would suffer no damage from legal proceedings or media attention. However, accepting this path would require Alexandra to serve drinks at a celebration funded by her stolen inheritance, while enabling Christopher to benefit from his crimes without consequences. The psychological analysis of submission revealed profound implications that extended far beyond the immediate humiliation of working as service staff at Christopher's reception. Accepting his demands would establish a pattern of abuse and exploitation that would likely continue throughout their lives, with Christopher understanding that he could violate her rights and dignity without facing meaningful resistance. The precedent would communicate to her entire family that Alexandra's welfare and respect were expendable when they conflicted with Christopher's desires or convenience. Furthermore, the financial implications of allowing the theft to proceed unchallenged would extend beyond the immediate loss of her trust fund. Christopher's successful exploitation of her inheritance would demonstrate that family resources were available for his personal use regardless of legal ownership or intended purposes. Future inheritances, gifts, or financial opportunities might become targets for similar manipulation if she failed to establish clear boundaries and consequences for theft. The alternative path of pursuing criminal charges and civil recovery represented a complete departure from the conflict avoidance that had characterized Alexandra's previous approach to family relationships. Legal action would require her to testify against her brother in court proceedings that would expose intimate family financial details to public scrutiny, while subjecting Christopher to potential imprisonment and permanent criminal record. The social and emotional costs of this approach would be enormous and irreversible. However, the justice-seeking path would also establish Alexandra's commitment to personal dignity and legal accountability, while potentially recovering the financial resources necessary for pursuing her architectural firm aspirations. More importantly, pursuing prosecution would demonstrate to herself and others that she possessed the moral courage necessary to defend her rights, despite family pressure and social expectations that prioritized harmony over justice. The decision-making process required Alexandra to examine fundamental questions about identity and values that she had never previously confronted. Her privileged background had protected her from situations where choosing between right and wrong involved significant personal sacrifice or social consequences. The current crisis forced her to determine whether her commitment to justice and personal integrity was genuine or merely theoretical when tested by real-world pressures. Alexandra's professional background in sustainable architecture provided unexpected insights that influenced her decision-making process. Her work focused on creating buildings that would generate positive environmental impact over decades, rather than optimizing immediate costs or convenience. This long-term perspective helped her evaluate her current situation with similar strategic thinking, considering how her decision would affect her life trajectory over years and decades, rather than focusing exclusively on immediate consequences. The environmental design principle of systemic thinking also influenced Alexandra's analysis of her family dynamics. Just as buildings affected their surrounding environment through resource consumption and community impact, her response to Christopher's theft would influence family behavior patterns and expectations for years to come. Accepting abuse would enable continued exploitation, while pursuing justice would establish boundaries that could protect her and potentially other family members from future manipulation. During the middle of the week, Alexandra contacted 3 close friends from graduate school to seek perspective from people who understood her values and capabilities but remained outside the immediate family situation. These conversations provided emotional support while helping her examine potential blind spots or rationalization in her decision-making process. Her friends unanimously supported pursuing legal action, expressing outrage at Christopher's behavior, and confidence in Alexandra's ability to rebuild her life independently. The conversations with trusted friends revealed how completely her family had isolated her from external perspectives that might have provided earlier warning about Christopher's character and behavior patterns. Her graduate school colleagues described numerous instances from their shared experiences when Christopher had demonstrated entitlement and disrespect toward others, particularly women, that Alexandra had either missed or rationalized due to family loyalty. These external perspectives helped Alexandra recognize that her family's normalization of Christopher's selfishness and irresponsibility had prevented her from developing appropriate boundaries and expectations for respectful treatment. The comfortable family environment had enabled patterns of manipulation and exploitation that would have been immediately obvious and unacceptable in professional or social relationships outside their privileged circle. Alexandra also consulted with Thomas Harrison about the practical aspects of pursuing criminal charges and civil recovery, seeking realistic assessments of potential outcomes and timeline for legal proceedings. His experience with similar cases provided valuable information about the likelihood of successful prosecution and financial recovery, while helping her understand the specific steps and requirements involved in pursuing justice through the legal system. Thomas Harrison's professional assessment indicated strong prospects for successful criminal prosecution based on the extensive documentation of Christopher's unauthorized transactions and forged authorizations. The evidence clearly demonstrated intent to defraud, while the sophisticated nature of the theft suggested premeditation rather than impulsive behavior. Federal prosecutors would likely be interested in the case due to the substantial amounts involved and the complexity of the financial manipulation. The civil recovery prospects were similarly positive, though the timeline for recovering funds would depend on Christopher's cooperation and the availability of assets that could be seized or liquidated to satisfy judgment. Thomas Harrison explained that successful criminal prosecution would strengthen civil proceedings while potentially enabling recovery of legal fees and additional damages beyond the stolen trust fund principle. However, Thomas Harrison also emphasized that legal proceedings would require approximately 18 months to complete, while creating ongoing stress and uncertainty throughout the process. Alexandra would need to maintain employment and manage living expenses during this period, while dealing with family hostility and potential social ostracism from their elite social circle. The emotional and practical challenges would test her resilience and determination throughout the extended legal battle. The financial analysis of pursuing independence revealed both challenges and opportunities that would reshape Alexandra's entire life trajectory. Without her trust fund, establishing an architectural firm would require alternative financing through business loans, investor partnerships, or gradual self-funding through salary savings. These approaches would take longer and involve greater risk than her original plans, but they would also force her to develop business skills and financial discipline that inherited wealth might have prevented her from acquiring. The employment implications of legal proceedings required careful consideration of her current position at Morrison Environmental Design. Alexandra's supervisors and colleagues would likely support her pursuit of justice, but the media attention and time requirements of court proceedings might create complications for client relationships and project deadlines. She would need to manage these professional challenges while maintaining focus on excellent work performance that demonstrated her capabilities independent of family wealth. The social consequences of pursuing criminal charges would extend throughout Manhattan's elite circles, where the Westfield and Ashford families maintained extensive relationships and business connections. Alexandra would likely face ostracism from social events and networking opportunities that had previously been available through family connections. However, this exclusion might also free her from social obligations and expectations that had never aligned with her personal values and interests. By Thursday evening, Alexandra had reached preliminary conclusions about her decision, while recognizing that she needed to consider one final factor that would significantly influence the long-term implications of her choice. Ties. She needed to determine whether any possibility existed for her parents to support her pursuit of justice, despite their historical favoritism toward Christopher and their concern about family reputation. The decision to approach her parents before finalizing her legal strategy represented Alexandra's final attempt to preserve some possibility of family reconciliation, while ensuring that Richard and Margaret Westfield understood the full scope of Christopher's betrayal before making their own decisions about how to respond. Their reaction would influence her approach to legal proceedings while determining whether she would face complete family isolation or retain some support during the challenging period ahead. Alexandra scheduled a dinner meeting with her parents for Friday evening at their Fifth Avenue apartment, planning to present the evidence of Christopher's theft while explaining her intention to pursue criminal charges unless they could persuade him to make immediate restitution. This approach would give her parents an opportunity to address the situation through family intervention while establishing clear expectations about her commitment to seeking justice regardless of their preferences. The preparation for this conversation with her parents required Alexandra to anticipate various responses and prepare appropriate strategies for each potential outcome. Her parents might support her pursuit of justice, attempt to negotiate compromise solutions, pressure her to protect family reputation, or side completely with Christopher, despite evidence of his criminal behavior. Each scenario would require different approaches while maintaining her fundamental commitment to accountability and restitution. The motivational significance of Alexandra's decision-making process demonstrated the profound personal growth that crisis situations can catalyze when individuals choose to respond with courage and integrity, rather than accepting comfortable victimization. Her systematic analysis of options and consequences reflected the analytical skills that would serve her well in rebuilding her life independently, while her commitment to justice despite personal costs revealed character strength that her privileged background had never required her to develop. The week of decision-making had transformed Alexandra from someone who had never faced genuine adversity into a person prepared to sacrifice family relationships and social standing for the sake of principle and self-respect. This transformation represented the foundation for all subsequent achievements and demonstrated how devastating betrayals can become catalysts for discovering capabilities and values that comfortable circumstances never reveal. The stage was now set for Alexandra's final conversation with her parents before pursuing criminal charges, establishing whether she would face complete family abandonment or retain some support during her fight for justice and financial recovery. Her decision to choose dignity over comfort would soon be tested through the most challenging period of her life, while setting the foundation for unprecedented personal and professional growth. The Friday evening dinner at her parents' Fifth Avenue apartment represented Alexandra's final opportunity to preserve family relationships while pursuing accountability for Christopher's criminal actions. The elegant setting of the Westfield family dining room, with its crystal chandeliers and original artwork reflecting generations of accumulated wealth, provided an ironic backdrop for revealing how greed and entitlement had corrupted the family values that such symbols of prosperity were meant to represent. Richard and Margaret Westfield had prepared Alexandra's favorite meal as a gesture of affection, unaware that their daughter would soon shatter their comfortable assumptions about family loyalty and their son's character. The carefully orchestrated dinner reflected their continued investment in maintaining family harmony, despite the underlying tensions that had developed around Christopher's wedding expenses and financial irresponsibility. Alexandra approached the conversation with strategic precision developed through her architectural training, understanding that the presentation of evidence and explanation of consequences would determine whether her parents responded with support or defensive denial. She had organized comprehensive documentation of Christopher's theft while preparing clear explanations that would help her parents understand both the legal implications and the personal betrayal represented by their son's actions. The initial portion of the dinner proceeded according to familiar family patterns, with Richard discussing recent business developments while Margaret shared updates about wedding preparations and social obligations. Alexandra participated in these conversations while internally preparing for the moment when she would shift the focus toward the devastating revelation that would forever alter their family dynamics. The transition to serious discussion occurred when Alexandra explained that she needed to address an urgent family matter that required their immediate attention and support. Her parents' expressions shifted from casual interest to concern as they recognized the gravity in her tone and demeanor, though they remained completely unprepared for the scope of the crisis she was about to reveal. Alexandra began by explaining that she had discovered significant irregularities in her trust fund administration that required family discussion before pursuing appropriate remedies. This approach provided context while avoiding immediate accusations that might trigger defensive responses before her parents had opportunity to understand the full extent of Christopher's betrayal. The presentation of evidence proceeded methodically as Alexandra shared bank statements, transfer authorizations, and communication records that documented the systematic theft of her inheritance over the preceding 8 months. She explained each transaction while providing timeline correlation with Christopher's wedding expenses, enabling her parents to understand the sophisticated nature of the fraud while recognizing the direct connection between stolen funds and their son's financial needs. Richard Westfield's initial response reflected his background in business management and legal compliance, focusing on technical questions about authorization procedures and institutional oversight that might have enabled such extensive unauthorized access. His analytical approach demonstrated intellectual engagement with the evidence, while suggesting that he understood the serious legal implications of the documented transactions. Margaret Westfield's reaction emphasized emotional dimensions of the revelation, expressing disbelief that Christopher would violate family trust while questioning whether alternative explanations might account for the apparent evidence of theft. Her maternal instincts created resistance to accepting that her son had deliberately stolen from his sister, while maintaining normal family relationships throughout the period of criminal activity. The explanation of Christopher's confession and subsequent demands represented the most shocking aspect of Alexandra's presentation, as her parents struggled to process that their son had not only stolen her inheritance, but also expected her to serve as staff at his wedding reception while accepting ongoing financial abuse. The level of cruelty and entitlement revealed by these demands exceeded even their worst previous concerns about Christopher's character and judgment. The discussion of legal options and potential consequences forced Richard and Margaret Westfield to confront the reality that their son faced potential federal prosecution and imprisonment, while their family would endure public scandal that would destroy their social standing and business relationships. The magnitude of these implications created visible distress as they realized that Christopher's actions had endangered far more than Alexandra's financial security. Alexandra's request for family intervention to secure voluntary restitution represented her final attempt to resolve the situation without destroying Christopher's future through criminal prosecution. She explained that immediate repayment of stolen funds would enable her to forego legal action while preserving family relationships and avoiding public exposure of their private financial affairs. However, the practical challenges of securing such restitution became apparent as the family examined Christopher's current financial position and asset availability. The stolen trust fund money had been spent on wedding expenses and lifestyle maintenance rather than invested in recoverable assets, while Christopher's remaining resources were insufficient to provide meaningful repayment without liquidating investments and property that would create their own financial hardships. The timeline pressures associated with Christopher's wedding, scheduled for the following month, created additional complications for any family intervention strategy. Canceling or significantly reducing the wedding expenses would require explanations to the Ashford family and hundreds of invited guests, while potentially creating legal obligations to vendors who had already provided services or made preparation investments. Richard Westfield's business perspective led him to suggest family financial restructuring that would enable collective repayment of Alexandra's stolen inheritance, while avoiding criminal prosecution that would damage everyone's interests. This approach would require significant family financial contributions, while ensuring that Christopher faced meaningful consequences through reduced inheritance and ongoing financial obligations. Margaret Westfield supported family intervention efforts while expressing hope that Christopher's confession and commitment to restitution might enable reconciliation that would preserve family relationships, despite the serious violations that had occurred. Her perspective emphasized forgiveness and healing rather than punishment, though she acknowledged that meaningful consequences would be necessary to prevent future abuse. Alexandra's response to these family intervention proposals revealed the evolution in her thinking that had occurred throughout the decision-making process. While she appreciated her parents' willingness to address the situation seriously, she explained that Christopher's complete lack of remorse and his expectation that she serve at his wedding demonstrated fundamental character issues that extended beyond financial theft to encompass psychological abuse and manipulation. The conversation reached its critical turning point when Alexandra explained that she had already scheduled meetings with federal prosecutors and intended to pursue criminal charges regardless of family intervention efforts, unless Christopher immediately demonstrated genuine accountability and began systematic restitution. This ultimatum forced her parents to choose between supporting their daughter's pursuit of justice and protecting their son from the consequences of his criminal actions. Richard Westfield's initial response emphasized practical concerns about the family business and social relationships that would suffer damage from public criminal proceedings. He argued that Alexandra's pursuit of criminal charges would create cascading negative consequences that would harm everyone, while potentially destroying business relationships and community standing that had required generations to establish. Margaret Westfield's reaction focused on emotional appeals for family unity and forgiveness, suggesting that criminal prosecution would permanently destroy relationships that could potentially be healed through private resolution and ongoing family therapy. She expressed conviction that Christopher's behavior reflected poor judgment rather than fundamental moral failure, arguing that appropriate consequences and professional counseling could address the underlying issues. Alexandra's response to these appeals revealed the depth of her transformation from someone who had previously prioritized family harmony over personal dignity. She explained that Christopher's theft represented not merely poor financial judgment but deliberate betrayal that demonstrated complete disrespect for her rights and welfare, while his subsequent demands proved that he viewed her as an asset to be exploited, rather than a sister deserving basic respect. The discussion of Christopher's character and behavior patterns led to uncomfortable revelations about family dynamics that had enabled his sense of entitlement, while suppressing Alexandra's legitimate concerns about fair treatment and equal consideration. Richard and Margaret Westfield began recognizing how their favoritism toward Christopher's social success had created expectations that family resources should be available to support his lifestyle regardless of legal ownership or intended purposes. The conversation concluded with Alexandra's parents requesting time to process the information and develop family response strategies while attempting to persuade Christopher to acknowledge his wrongdoing and commit to meaningful restitution. Alexandra agreed to delay legal action for 72 hours, while warning that her patience for family intervention was extremely limited given the magnitude of Christopher's betrayal and his complete absence of remorse. The aftermath of this family revelation created profound uncertainty about relationships and loyalties that had provided emotional foundation throughout Alexandra's life. Her parents' responses suggested genuine concern about her welfare, combined with protective instincts toward Christopher that might ultimately prevent them from supporting accountability measures necessary for justice and healing. The motivational dimension of this family confrontation demonstrated the courage required to challenge comfortable family dynamics when they enable abuse and exploitation. Alexandra's willingness to risk complete family rejection rather than accept ongoing victimization illustrated the personal growth that crisis situations can catalyze when individuals choose principle over convenience and justice over harmony. The 72-hour deadline established clear expectations while providing her parents with final opportunity to demonstrate whether their commitment to family extended to protecting all children equally or remained focused exclusively on enabling Christopher's comfort and avoiding consequences for his actions. This test of family values would determine whether Alexandra faced complete isolation or retained some support during her pursuit of justice. The stage was now set for the family's final decision about whether to support accountability and restitution or enable continued abuse and exploitation, establishing the foundation for Alexandra's next phase of transformation as she prepared to rebuild her life, either with limited family support or complete independence from relationships that had proved conditional on her acceptance of mistreatment. The 72-hour period following Alexandra's revelation to her parents marked the most intensive family crisis management effort in the Westfield family history. Richard and Margaret Westfield mobilized their considerable resources and relationships to address Christopher's criminal behavior, while attempting to prevent the complete destruction of family unity and social standing that criminal prosecution would inevitably create. Their intervention strategy began with an emergency family meeting scheduled for Saturday morning at the Westfield family estate in the Hamptons, providing privacy for difficult conversations while removing external distractions that might interfere with productive dialogue. The location choice reflected their understanding that resolving this crisis would require extensive time and complete focus from all participants. Richard Westfield approached the intervention with the systematic methodology that had made him successful in business negotiations and crisis management throughout his corporate career. He developed a comprehensive agenda addressing immediate restitution requirements, long-term family relationship repair, and strategic approaches for preventing future financial abuse. His preparation included consultation with family attorneys who specialized in estate planning and criminal defense to understand all available options. Margaret Westfield focused her preparation on emotional and psychological dimensions of the family crisis, seeking guidance from therapists who worked with wealthy families facing internal conflicts and betrayal. Her approach emphasized healing relationships while establishing boundaries that would prevent future exploitation, though she remained fundamentally committed to preserving family unity despite the serious violations that had occurred. The invitation extended to Christopher emphasized the critical nature of the meeting, while making clear that his participation was mandatory rather than optional. Richard Westfield explained that failure to attend would result in immediate termination of all family financial support while triggering Alexandra's criminal prosecution without further delay. This ultimatum ensured Christopher's attendance while establishing serious consequences for continued non-cooperation. Christopher arrived at the family estate accompanied by Vivienne, whose presence he had insisted upon despite his parents' preference for limiting the discussion to immediate family members. His decision to include his fiancée demonstrated either confidence that family intervention would prove manageable or complete failure to understand the gravity of his situation and the potential consequences of continued defiance. The formal presentation of evidence proceeded according to Richard Westfield's prepared agenda, with comprehensive documentation of Christopher's unauthorized transactions displayed chronologically to demonstrate the systematic nature of his theft over the preceding 8 months. The visual presentation enabled all participants to understand the scope and sophistication of the financial manipulation while eliminating any remaining possibility of denial or alternative explanations. Christopher's initial response maintained the defensive posture he had demonstrated during his private confrontation with Alexandra, arguing that his actions represented reasonable family financial management rather than criminal theft. He emphasized the social and business benefits that his wedding would generate for the entire family, while minimizing the significance of using Alexandra's trust fund to finance the celebration. Vivianne's participation in defending Christopher's actions revealed the extent to which she had been informed about and complicit in the trust fund theft. Her arguments focused on wedding expenses as family investments that would enhance the Westfield's social position, while suggesting that Alexandra's modest lifestyle made her trust fund excessive for her actual needs. This perspective demonstrated that Christopher had convinced his fiancée to support his rationalization, despite the obvious legal and moral violations involved. The discussion of immediate restitution requirements forced Christopher to confront the practical impossibility of returning the stolen funds without family assistance or significant personal sacrifice. His remaining assets were insufficient to provide meaningful repayment while maintaining his current lifestyle and wedding commitments, creating financial pressure that would require fundamental changes in his spending patterns and future expectations. Richard Westfield's proposed resolution involved family loan arrangements that would enable Christopher to repay Alexandra's trust fund through structured payments over a 10-year period, while accepting reduced inheritance rights and ongoing financial oversight. This approach would avoid criminal prosecution while ensuring accountability through meaningful consequences that would affect Christopher's long-term financial position and family status. Margaret Westfield supported the loan arrangement while proposing additional requirements for professional counseling and financial management education that would address the underlying psychological and behavioral issues that had enabled Christopher's criminal actions. Her approach emphasized rehabilitation and personal growth while maintaining family relationships through structured accountability measures. Alexandra's response to these family intervention proposals revealed the complete evolution in her perspective that had occurred throughout the crisis. She explained that her primary concern had shifted beyond financial recovery to establishing precedents for family accountability, and ensuring that Christopher faced meaningful consequences that would prevent future abuse of trust and exploitation of family members. The critical issue that emerged during family discussions involved Christopher's complete absence of genuine remorse or acknowledgement that his actions had caused legitimate harm to Alexandra and violated fundamental family values. His continued justification of the theft as reasonable family financial management demonstrated psychological patterns that suggested high probability of future exploitation regardless of loan arrangements or counseling requirements. Alexandra's analysis of Christopher's character and behavior patterns led her to conclude that family intervention without criminal prosecution would enable continued abuse while teaching him that serious violations could be resolved through family pressure and financial arrangements, rather than facing legal consequences. This precedent would endanger her future security while potentially affecting other family members who might become targets for exploitation. The conversation reached its decisive moment when Alexandra presented Christopher with a final ultimatum that would determine whether family intervention could succeed or whether criminal prosecution would proceed immediately. She required his public acknowledgement of criminal wrongdoing, genuine apology for the betrayal and harm caused, immediate cessation of wedding planning funded by stolen money, and commitment to systematic restitution through legitimate employment rather than family subsidies. Christopher's response to this ultimatum exceeded even Alexandra's worst expectations for continued defiance and entitlement. Rather than acknowledging wrongdoing or expressing remorse, he became increasingly aggressive in defending his actions while attacking Alexandra's motivations and threatening consequences if she pursued criminal charges that would damage family reputation and business relationships. The most shocking aspect of Christopher's response involved his renewed insistence that Alexandra participate in his wedding reception as service staff, while accepting his theft as a reasonable family financial arrangement. He argued that her cooperation would demonstrate family loyalty while providing her with employment income that would begin addressing her financial needs now that her trust fund was no longer available for her architectural firm plans. Vivianne's support for Christopher's demands revealed the complete moral corruption that had characterized their relationship and wedding planning process. She argued that Alexandra's resistance to serving at the reception demonstrated selfishness and unwillingness to contribute to family celebrations, suggesting that manual labor would provide valuable character development while enabling her to earn money through effort rather than inherited wealth. The family intervention reached its breaking point when Christopher threatened to expose private family financial information publicly if Alexandra proceeded with criminal prosecution, arguing that mutual destruction through media attention would punish everyone for her unwillingness to accept reasonable compromise solutions. This threat demonstrated his willingness to weaponize family privacy concerns while revealing complete absence of loyalty or consideration for anyone beyond his immediate interests. Richard and Margaret Westfield's response to Christopher's threats and continued defiance marked the moment when their protective instincts shifted from enabling their son's behavior to supporting their daughter's pursuit of justice. They recognized that Christopher's psychological patterns and moral failures extended beyond financial irresponsibility to encompass fundamental character defects that could not be addressed through family intervention or counseling. The conclusion of the family meeting established clear positions that would determine future relationships and loyalties within the Westfield family. Christopher's refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing or accept accountability eliminated any possibility of resolution through family cooperation, while demonstrating that he viewed other family members as resources to be exploited, rather than people deserving respect and consideration. Alexandra's parents committed to supporting her pursuit of criminal prosecution while accepting the social and business consequences that would result from public exposure of their family crisis. Their decision reflected recognition that enabling Christopher's continued abuse would create greater long-term damage than facing immediate consequences of legal action and media attention. The motivational significance of this family intervention demonstrated that genuine accountability requires willingness to enforce consequences, despite emotional attachments and social pressures that favor maintaining comfortable illusions over confronting difficult truths. Alexandra's insistence on justice despite family pressure illustrated the personal strength that crisis situations can reveal when individuals choose principle over convenience. The failure of family intervention efforts also validated Alexandra's assessment that Christopher's character issues extended beyond financial irresponsibility to encompass fundamental moral failures that could not be resolved through counseling or family support. Her recognition of these patterns enabled her to make decisions based on realistic evaluation rather than wishful thinking about potential rehabilitation. The stage was now set for Alexandra's transition from attempted family resolution to full legal prosecution, establishing the foundation for her complete independence from family relationships that had proved conditional on her acceptance of abuse and exploitation. The failed intervention had eliminated any remaining obligations to prioritize family harmony over personal dignity and justice. Christopher's final betrayal through threatening public exposure of family privacy concerns demonstrated the complete absence of loyalty or consideration that characterized his approach to all relationships. This revelation freed Alexandra from any remaining emotional attachments that might have influenced her pursuit of accountability and justice through legal channels. The transformation from family member seeking reconciliation to independent individual pursuing justice represented a fundamental shift in Alexandra's identity and priorities that would influence all subsequent decisions and relationships. Her evolution from privileged dependency to principled independence was now complete, establishing the foundation for rebuilding her life according to her own values rather than family expectations. The Monday morning following the failed family intervention marked the beginning of Alexandra's transformation from victim of financial crime to architect of her own justice and independence. Her decision to pursue criminal prosecution represented more than seeking legal remedy for Christopher's theft. It constituted a fundamental commitment to rebuilding her life according to principles of integrity and self-reliance, rather than accepting comfortable victimization within dysfunctional family dynamics. Alexandra's first appointment was scheduled for 9 o'clock at the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, where she would meet with Assistant United States Attorney Jennifer Morrison, who specialized in complex financial crimes involving substantial amounts and sophisticated manipulation techniques. The Federal Prosecution Office had expressed immediate interest in the case due to the documentation quality and the substantial amounts involved in the theft. The preparation for this meeting required Alexandra to organize comprehensive evidence while developing clear presentations that would enable prosecutors to understand both the technical aspects of the financial manipulation and the personal dimensions of family betrayal that had motivated Christopher's criminal behavior. Her architectural training in systematic documentation and visual presentation proved invaluable for creating materials that would support effective prosecution. Thomas Harrison accompanied Alexandra to the prosecutor meeting, providing professional credibility and technical expertise about trust fund administration while demonstrating the institutional support that would be available throughout the legal proceedings. His presence communicated that the case involved legitimate financial professionals, rather than merely family disputes that might be better resolved through civil litigation. Assistant United States Attorney Morrison expressed immediate confidence about prosecution prospects based on the comprehensive documentation and clear evidence trail that demonstrated Christopher's systematic theft over an extended period. The sophistication of the financial manipulation combined with the substantial amounts involved created strong federal interest, while the extensive documentation eliminated concerns about evidence sufficiency that might complicate prosecution. The federal charges that would be pursued included wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, and money laundering, creating potential penalties that could result in Christopher facing 15 to 20 years in federal prison, along with substantial financial penalties and permanent criminal record. The severity of these potential consequences reflected both the seriousness of his crimes and the federal government's commitment to prosecuting financial crimes involving sophisticated techniques and substantial amounts. The prosecution timeline would require approximately 12 to 18 months to complete, beginning with grand jury proceedings that would formalize the criminal charges, while providing additional investigation opportunities for federal agents specializing in financial crimes. The extended timeline would enable thorough investigation while creating ongoing uncertainty for Christopher that might motivate cooperation and restitution efforts. Alexandra's decision to pursue criminal prosecution created immediate practical challenges that required strategic planning and resource management during the extended legal process. Her employment at Morrison Environmental Design would need to accommodate court appearances and deposition requirements while maintaining professional performance standards that demonstrated her capabilities independent of family wealth and legal proceedings. The media attention that federal prosecution would generate presented both challenges and opportunities for Alexandra's professional development and personal growth. The public exposure would create uncomfortable scrutiny of private family matters, while potentially damaging her professional reputation within Manhattan's elite business circles that valued discretion and conflict avoidance over justice and accountability. However, the media coverage would also provide platforms for demonstrating her commitment to justice and personal integrity while establishing her professional identity independent of family wealth and social connections. Her decision to pursue prosecution despite personal costs would communicate strength and principle that could attract potential clients and collaborators who valued these characteristics in business relationships. The immediate financial implications of losing her trust fund required Alexandra to restructure her personal budget while developing alternative strategies for achieving her professional goals without inherited wealth. Her salary at Morrison Environmental Design provided sufficient income for basic living expenses, but would require significant adjustments to accommodate the legal fees and reduced financial security that prosecution would create. The process of budgeting without trust fund security forced Alexandra to examine her spending patterns and lifestyle choices with newfound precision and discipline. She discovered numerous areas where her comfortable assumptions about financial resources had prevented optimal decision-making about necessities versus conveniences that could be eliminated or reduced without compromising her quality of life or professional effectiveness. This financial discipline development represented an unexpected benefit of losing her inheritance. as the necessity of managing limited resources created capabilities and awareness that inherited wealth might have prevented her from acquiring. The skills she developed during this challenging period would prove invaluable for future business development and personal financial management, regardless of whether she ultimately recovered the stolen funds. Alexandra also began exploring alternative financing strategies for establishing her architectural firm without relying on trust fund capital. These investigations revealed numerous options, including small business loans, investor partnerships, and gradual self-funding through salary savings that would enable her to pursue entrepreneurial goals while maintaining employment security during the transition period. The research into business financing alternatives opened new perspectives about entrepreneurship and business development that challenged her previous assumptions about capital requirements and success strategies. She discovered that many successful firms had been established with minimal initial capital through creative resource management and strategic partnership development, rather than substantial financial investments. These discoveries encouraged Alexandra to reconsider her architectural firm concept with greater emphasis on service innovation and client value creation, rather than capital-intensive approaches that her trust fund resources had initially enabled. The forced creativity and resource constraint could potentially lead to more sustainable and innovative business models than her original well-funded but conventional approach. The professional support that Alexandra received from her colleagues at Morrison Environmental Design exceeded her expectations and provided crucial encouragement during the challenging transition period. Her supervisors and peers expressed unanimous support for her pursuit of justice, while offering flexible scheduling and additional responsibilities that would enhance her professional development during the legal proceedings. This professional support demonstrated that her capabilities and character had earned genuine respect, independent of her family background or financial resources. The validation provided confidence about her ability to succeed professionally based on merit rather than inherited advantages, reinforcing her decision to pursue independence rather than accepting family abuse for financial security. The networking opportunities that emerged through her legal proceedings created unexpected professional connections with other victims of financial crimes and their advocates, who appreciated her willingness to pursue justice, despite personal costs. These relationships provided both emotional support and potential business connections that might benefit her future firm establishment efforts. The legal proceedings also introduced Alexandra to federal agents and prosecutors, whose work focused on financial crime prevention and victim advocacy. These professional relationships provided insights into business security and financial management that would prove valuable for protecting her future business ventures from similar exploitation or fraud attempts. The personal growth that occurred during the first month of legal proceedings revealed capabilities and strength that Alexandra had never been required to develop during her privileged upbringing. The necessity of managing complex legal, financial, and professional challenges simultaneously, while maintaining emotional equilibrium, demonstrated resilience and competence that surprised even her closest friends and colleagues. The daily discipline required for managing multiple competing priorities while pursuing long-term objectives created organizational and time management skills that enhanced her professional effectiveness beyond the immediate legal requirements. These capabilities would prove essential for future business leadership and project management regardless of her specific career trajectory. The emotional processing of family betrayal and social isolation required Alexandra to develop new support systems and coping strategies, independent of family relationships that had previously provided emotional foundation. The independence and self-reliance that emerged from this process created psychological strength that would influence all future relationships and decision-making processes. The motivational significance of this legal battle initiation phase demonstrated how choosing justice over comfort can catalyze profound personal development while creating opportunities for growth that comfortable circumstances never provide. Alexandra's willingness to sacrifice family relationships and financial security for the sake of principle-established foundations for character development that would influence all subsequent achievements. The process of rebuilding life foundations without inherited advantages revealed the substantial capabilities and potential that privilege had previously obscured. The necessity of creating success through personal effort rather than family resources enabled Alexandra to discover talents and determination that comfortable circumstances had never required her to develop. The stage was now set for Alexandra to demonstrate whether her commitment to justice and independence would sustain her through the extended challenges of federal prosecution, while building new professional and personal foundations independent of family wealth and support. Her transformation from privileged dependency to principled self-reliance was accelerating through the crucible of legal proceedings and financial necessity. The beginning of criminal prosecution represented not merely pursuit of justice for past wrongs, but also investment in future integrity and independence that would define her character and capabilities for years to come. The legal battle had become a vehicle for personal transformation that would ultimately prove more valuable than the financial recovery it might achieve. The progression of federal prosecution during the subsequent 3 months created a structured framework within which Alexandra experienced accelerated professional development that transformed her from a talented junior architect into a recognized leader within Manhattan's sustainable design community. The necessity of managing complex legal proceedings while maintaining exemplary work performance demanded organizational capabilities and strategic thinking that elevated her professional competence beyond conventional career development trajectories. The federal investigation process required Alexandra to provide extensive testimony and documentation that detailed not only Christopher's financial crimes, but also the broader family dynamics and business relationships that had enabled his sophisticated theft. These depositions and interviews with federal agents created opportunities for Alexandra to demonstrate analytical thinking and communication skills that impressed legal professionals who typically worked with corporate executives and financial industry leaders. Assistant United States Attorney Morrison specifically commended Alexandra's ability to present complex financial information with clarity and precision while maintaining composure during challenging questioning about family relationships and personal motivations. This professional recognition from federal prosecutors enhanced Alexandra's confidence in her ability to handle high-pressure situations while establishing credibility within legal and business communities that valued competence under stress. The media attention surrounding the federal prosecution initially created concerns about potential negative impact on Alexandra's professional reputation and client relationships at Morrison Environmental Design. However, the coverage ultimately generated positive recognition for her commitment to justice and personal integrity that attracted attention from potential clients and collaborators who valued these characteristics in business partnerships. Several prominent environmental organizations and progressive corporations contacted Morrison Environmental Design, specifically requesting Alexandra's involvement in their sustainable design projects, citing her demonstrated commitment to ethical principles as a factor in their selection criteria. These inquiries created opportunities for Alexandra to work on higher-profile projects, while building professional relationships that would prove valuable for future career development. The increased project responsibilities that resulted from this client interest enabled Alexandra to develop expertise in areas that had previously been reserved for senior partners, including client relationship management, strategic planning, and business development coordination. Her supervisors recognized her enhanced capabilities by assigning leadership roles on projects that would typically require additional years of experience and professional development. The most significant professional opportunity emerged when the Environmental Justice Foundation, a prominent nonprofit organization focused on sustainable development in underserved communities, approached Alexandra about leading their new initiative to create affordable housing designs that would demonstrate environmental responsibility while addressing social equity concerns. This project aligned perfectly with her long-term vision for combining architectural expertise with meaningful social impact. The Environmental Justice Foundation project required Alexandra to develop comprehensive design solutions that would achieve carbon neutrality, while maintaining construction costs that enabled affordable housing development in urban areas where environmental and economic challenges intersected. The technical complexity of these requirements demanded innovative approaches that would distinguish her work from conventional sustainable design practices. The research and development phase of this project enabled Alexandra to collaborate with engineers, environmental scientists, and community development specialists, who provided expertise in areas that complemented her architectural knowledge. These interdisciplinary relationships expanded her professional network while developing collaborative skills that would prove essential for future business leadership and project management. The innovative design solutions that Alexandra developed for the Environmental Justice Foundation project incorporated advanced materials science, renewable energy systems, and community engagement strategies that addressed both environmental sustainability and social accessibility. Her approach demonstrated that high-quality design could be achieved within budget constraints that made affordable housing financially viable for both developers and residents. The successful completion of this project generated recognition from architectural journals, environmental publications, and community development organizations that established Alexandra as an emerging leader in sustainable design innovation. The professional visibility created speaking opportunities and consulting requests that enhanced her reputation while providing additional income during the challenging period of legal proceedings. The business development skills that Alexandra acquired through managing the Environmental Justice Foundation project included proposal writing, budget development, stakeholder coordination, and performance measurement systems that would prove directly applicable to establishing her own architectural firm. These capabilities represented practical business education that complemented her technical expertise while preparing her for entrepreneurial leadership. The financial management experience gained through overseeing project budgets and resource allocation provided Alexandra with practical understanding of business operations that her privileged background had never required her to develop. The necessity of maximizing value within constrained budgets created appreciation for efficiency and strategic resource utilization that would influence all future business decisions. The networking opportunities that emerged through her enhanced professional visibility connected Alexandra with successful entrepreneurs who had established businesses in related fields while sharing her commitment to environmental responsibility and social impact. These relationships provided mentorship and guidance about business development strategies that could enable her to achieve entrepreneurial goals without substantial initial capital. One particularly influential mentor was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had established a successful environmental consulting firm after leaving a corporate position to pursue independent practice focused on sustainability innovation. Dr. Rodriguez shared insights about business development strategies that emphasized service excellence and relationship building rather than capital-intensive approaches that required substantial financial investment. The mentorship relationship with Dr. Rodriguez provided Alexandra with practical guidance about client development, operational efficiency, and growth management that addressed the specific challenges of establishing professional service businesses in competitive markets. This knowledge enabled her to refine her business planning while developing realistic timelines and resource requirements for firm establishment. The professional development that occurred during this period also included enhanced technical capabilities in areas that would differentiate her future firm from established competitors. Alexandra pursued advanced certifications in green building design, renewable energy systems, and sustainable materials science that positioned her expertise at the forefront of industry innovation. These technical advances enabled Alexandra to develop proprietary methodologies for sustainable design that could provide competitive advantages while creating intellectual property that would support business development and client value creation. The investment in advanced expertise demonstrated commitment to excellence that attracted attention from industry leaders and potential clients. The legal proceedings continued to progress through federal investigation and grand jury proceedings that would ultimately result in formal indictment of Christopher on multiple felony charges. The federal agents involved in the investigation expressed confidence that the comprehensive evidence would support successful prosecution while enabling substantial financial recovery through asset seizure and restitution orders. The grand jury indictment process required Alexandra to provide additional testimony that detailed the personal impact of Christopher's theft, while explaining how the financial crimes had affected her ability to pursue professional goals and maintain family relationships. This testimony demonstrated the human consequences of financial crimes while supporting prosecution arguments for substantial penalties. The indictment announcement generated significant media coverage that portrayed Alexandra as a courageous victim who had chosen justice over family loyalty despite personal costs and social pressure. This coverage enhanced her professional reputation while attracting additional client interest from organizations that valued ethical leadership and principled decision-making. The business planning activities that Alexandra pursued during the legal proceedings enabled her to develop comprehensive strategies for establishing her architectural firm, using alternative financing approaches that would avoid dependence on inherited wealth or traditional bank lending. These plans incorporated lessons learned from her recent professional development, while addressing market opportunities that her enhanced expertise had revealed. The alternative financing strategy that emerged from her planning process involved establishing the firm through gradual expansion of consulting services, while maintaining employment at Morrison Environmental Design until client relationships and revenue streams could support full-time independent practice. This approach would minimize financial risk while enabling systematic business development based on demonstrated performance and client satisfaction. The client development strategy focused on environmental organizations and progressive corporations that required sustainable design expertise while valuing long-term relationships with service providers who shared their commitment to environmental responsibility and social impact. This market segment offered opportunities for meaningful work while providing revenue potential that could support sustainable business growth. The operational planning for her future firm incorporated efficiency strategies and technology utilization that would enable high-quality service delivery with minimal overhead costs and administrative complexity. These approaches would allow her to compete effectively with established firms, while maintaining flexibility for business development and market adaptation. The motivational significance of this professional transformation period demonstrated how adversity can accelerate capability development while creating opportunities that comfortable circumstances might never provide. Alexandra's necessity-driven professional growth enabled her to discover talents and potential that her privileged background had obscured, while building foundations for success that would prove more sustainable than inherited advantages. The integration of legal proceedings with accelerated professional development created a comprehensive transformation experience that addressed not only justice for past wrongs, but also preparation for future success independent of family resources and social advantages. The challenges had become catalysts for personal and professional evolution that exceeded her original career aspirations. The stage was now set for Alexandra to demonstrate whether her enhanced capabilities and professional recognition would enable successful transition to independent practice, while the legal proceedings continued toward resolution. Her transformation from privileged employee to recognized professional leader was positioning her for entrepreneurial success that would validate her decision to choose justice and independence over family acceptance and financial security. The culmination of 18 months of federal prosecution arrived with a conviction that exceeded even the most optimistic projections from the United States Attorney's Office. Christopher Westfield was found guilty on all charges including wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, and money laundering, resulting in a sentence of 14 years in federal prison, along with full restitution requirements totaling $4.1 million, including interest, penalties, and legal fees. The comprehensive nature of Christopher's conviction validated every aspect of Alexandra's decision to pursue criminal prosecution despite family pressure and social consequences. Federal Judge Patricia Chen specifically commended Alexandra's courage in pursuing justice while noting that financial crimes within families often go unprosecuted due to victims' reluctance to face social stigma and relationship destruction that criminal proceedings inevitably create. The restitution order included seizure of assets that Christopher and Vivienne had purchased using stolen trust fund money, including luxury vehicles, jewelry, and investment accounts that had been funded through the unauthorized transfers. The federal marshal's systematic asset recovery process demonstrated the comprehensive nature of criminal financial penalties, while ensuring that stolen resources would be returned to their rightful owner. The asset seizure process revealed the extent to which Christopher and Vivienne had integrated stolen funds into their lifestyle and financial planning, with evidence indicating that they had considered Alexandra's inheritance as permanently available for their personal use, rather than temporary borrowing that would require eventual repayment. This discovery reinforced the correctness of Alexandra's assessment that family intervention would never have achieved meaningful accountability or restitution. The wedding that Christopher had financed through theft was canceled 3 weeks before the scheduled date, when his arrest on federal charges became public knowledge. The Ashford family immediately terminated their engagement with the Westfields, while demanding reimbursement for expenses they had incurred in preparation for the celebration. The social scandal that resulted from these developments destroyed Christopher's reputation within Manhattan's elite circles, while validating Alexandra's prediction about the consequences of his criminal behavior. Vivian's response to Christopher's conviction included immediate termination of their engagement and public statements distancing herself from his criminal activities. Her claims of ignorance about the trust fund theft were contradicted by evidence presented during the trial that demonstrated her active participation in planning expenditures of stolen money. The collapse of their relationship illustrated the superficial nature of connections based on financial advantage rather than genuine affection and mutual respect. The financial recovery that resulted from criminal conviction exceeded Alexandra's original trust fund value due to interest, penalties, and additional damages that federal law imposed on financial crimes. The total restitution of $4.1 million provided substantially more capital than her original business plans had anticipated, while validating her decision to pursue justice despite family opposition and social pressure. However, the most significant outcome of the criminal prosecution was the validation of Alexandra's transformation from privileged dependency to principled independence. The 18 months of legal proceedings had enabled her to develop professional capabilities and personal strength that exceeded any advantages her trust fund inheritance could have provided, while establishing foundations for success that were based on merit rather than inherited wealth. The professional recognition that Alexandra had achieved during the prosecution period created opportunities for establishing her architectural firm under circumstances that were more favorable than her original business plans had envisioned. The client relationships and industry reputation she had developed provided immediate revenue potential while eliminating the market development challenges that typically complicate new business launches. The launch of Westfield Sustainable Design occurred 6 months after Christopher's conviction, when Alexandra possessed sufficient capital, client commitments, and professional recognition to ensure immediate viability and growth potential. The firm's mission focused on creating affordable, sustainable housing that would demonstrate how environmental responsibility could address social equity concerns, while maintaining economic viability for developers and residents. The initial client portfolio for Westfield Sustainable Design included 3 major projects that had been specifically developed through Alexandra's relationships with environmental organizations and progressive corporations that valued her demonstrated commitment to ethical principles and innovative design solutions. These founding projects provided substantial revenue while establishing the firm's reputation for excellence and social impact. The Environmental Justice Foundation project that had launched Alexandra's professional recognition became the cornerstone case study for demonstrating her firm's capabilities and approach to sustainable design innovation. The successful completion of affordable housing that achieved carbon neutrality while maintaining construction costs below market averages created a template that attracted interest from municipalities and developers seeking to address environmental and social challenges simultaneously. The business model that Alexandra developed for her firm incorporated lessons learned during her forced financial independence period, while emphasizing efficiency, innovation, and client value creation, rather than capital-intensive approaches that many established firms employed. This strategy enabled competitive pricing while maintaining profit margins that supported sustainable growth and reinvestment in advanced capabilities. The staffing strategy for Westfield Sustainable Design focused on recruiting talented professionals who shared Alexandra's commitment to environmental responsibility and social impact, while providing career development opportunities that established firms often failed to offer emerging architects and designers. This approach created a collaborative culture that enhanced creativity while building loyalty and retention that supported long-term business development. The first year of operations exceeded Alexandra's most optimistic projections, with revenue reaching $2.3 million, while establishing Westfield Sustainable Design as a recognized leader in affordable, sustainable housing design. The firm's success attracted attention from industry publications and professional organizations, while creating speaking opportunities and consulting requests that enhanced Alexandra's reputation and business development prospects. The professional recognition that accompanied her firm's success included awards from architectural associations, environmental organizations, and community development groups that acknowledged both the technical excellence and social impact of her work. These accolades established Alexandra as an influential voice in sustainable design, while creating platforms for advocating policy changes that would support broader adoption of environmental responsibility in housing development. The business expansion that occurred during the second year of operations enabled Alexandra to establish satellite offices in Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., while hiring additional staff members who specialized in renewable energy systems, sustainable materials, science, and community engagement strategies. This geographic and technical expansion created opportunities for larger projects while maintaining the firm's focus on affordable housing and social impact. The industry influence that Alexandra developed through her firm's success created opportunities for consulting on policy initiatives related to sustainable development and affordable housing at federal and state levels. These engagements provided additional revenue while enabling her to influence regulations and incentive programs that would support broader adoption of sustainable design practices. The mentorship responsibilities that Alexandra accepted as her professional reputation grew included serving on advisory boards for architectural education programs and providing guidance to emerging professionals who shared her commitment to environmental responsibility and social impact. These activities contributed to industry development while creating networks that supported continued business growth and innovation. The financial success of Westfield's sustainable design enabled Alexandra to establish charitable giving programs that supported environmental education and affordable housing development in underserved communities. These philanthropic activities aligned with her personal values while creating additional opportunities for professional recognition and business development through relationships with nonprofit organizations and foundation supporters. The personal satisfaction that Alexandra derived from building successful business, independent of family wealth, exceeded any advantages that her inherited trust fund could have provided. The knowledge that her achievements resulted from personal effort and merit-based performance created confidence and fulfillment that inherited advantages never could have generated. The family relationships that had been destroyed by Christopher's theft and Alexandra's pursuit of justice remained permanently severed despite his conviction and imprisonment. Richard and Margaret Westfield maintained limited contact with Alexandra while expressing regret about the family crisis, but never acknowledged their role in enabling Christopher's sense of entitlement through years of favoritism and financial support without accountability. The social isolation from Manhattan's elite circles that resulted from the criminal prosecution proved to be beneficial for Alexandra's personal and professional development. The necessity of building relationships based on shared values and mutual respect rather than social advantage created more authentic connections while eliminating superficial obligations that had previously consumed time and energy without providing meaningful value. The motivational significance of Alexandra's complete transformation from victim of family betrayal to successful independent entrepreneur demonstrated that devastating setbacks can become catalysts for achievements that exceed original aspirations when individuals respond with courage and strategic thinking, rather than accepting comfortable victimization. The integration of justice-seeking with business development created a comprehensive success story that validated every difficult decision Alexandra had made during the 18 months of legal proceedings and professional development. Her willingness to sacrifice family relationships and social standing for the sake of principle had enabled discoveries about personal capability and potential that comfortable circumstances never would have revealed. The stage was now set for Alexandra to demonstrate the long-term sustainability of her business success, while building industry influence that would enable even greater impact on environmental responsibility and social equity through sustainable design innovation. Her transformation from privileged dependency to principled leadership had created foundations for continued growth and contribution that far exceeded the value of any inheritance. 3 years after Christopher's conviction, Alexandra Westfield stood before an audience of 500 aspiring entrepreneurs at the Harvard Business School Annual Innovation Conference, delivering a keynote address that would become one of the most widely shared motivational presentations in the institution's history. Her journey from trust fund theft victim to industry-leading sustainable design entrepreneur had captured international attention while inspiring countless individuals facing their own seemingly insurmountable challenges. The invitation to speak at Harvard represented the culmination of professional recognition that had grown systematically through Westfield Sustainable Design's unprecedented success in revolutionizing affordable housing development across multiple metropolitan areas. Her firm's innovative approaches had demonstrated that environmental responsibility and social equity could be achieved simultaneously while maintaining economic viability that attracted both public and private sector support. The audience that gathered to hear Alexandra's presentation included established entrepreneurs, emerging business leaders, academic researchers, and policymakers who were seeking insights about transforming adversity into competitive advantage while building enterprises that generated both financial success and meaningful social impact. Her reputation for combining analytical rigor with inspirational leadership had created anticipation for a presentation that would provide practical guidance alongside motivational encouragement. Alexandra's presentation began with the stark contrast between her privileged upbringing and the devastating betrayal that had stripped away every assumption about family loyalty and financial security that had previously defined her identity and expectations. She described the shock of discovering Christopher's theft not merely as financial crime but as complete violation of trust that forced her to question fundamental beliefs about relationships and personal worth. The detailed account of her decision-making process during the crisis period illustrated the systematic approach she had developed for evaluating options and consequences, while maintaining focus on long-term objectives rather than immediate comfort or social acceptance. This methodology had enabled her to choose justice and independence, despite enormous pressure to accept family demands and avoid public confrontation. The description of her transformation during the 18 months of legal proceedings emphasized how necessity had catalyzed professional development that exceeded conventional career advancement timelines, while creating capabilities that comfortable circumstances never would have required her to develop. The forced independence had revealed talents and potential that inherited wealth had previously obscured. Alexandra's analysis of business development without substantial initial capital provided practical insights about resource optimization, strategic partnership development, and market positioning that addressed challenges faced by many emerging entrepreneurs who lacked inherited advantages or extensive financial backing. Her approaches had demonstrated that service excellence and relationship building could overcome resource limitations while creating sustainable competitive advantages. The case studies that Alexandra presented from Westfield's Sustainable Designs portfolio illustrated how innovative solutions could address complex societal challenges while generating profitable business opportunities that attracted both social impact investors and conventional venture capital support. Her projects had proven that environmental responsibility and social equity could enhance rather than compromise economic performance. The discussion of industry influence and policy advocacy demonstrated how business success could create platforms for systemic change that extended impact beyond individual firm achievements, while contributing to broader social progress through professional leadership and community engagement. Alexandra's work had influenced legislation and regulatory frameworks that supported sustainable development across multiple jurisdictions. The presentation's most powerful segment addressed the psychological and emotional dimensions of transformation that had enabled her to rebuild identity and self-worth, independent of family relationships and inherited advantages. She described the process of developing authentic confidence based on merit and achievement rather than social position or financial security that external circumstances could threaten or eliminate. Alexandra emphasized that the greatest value of her experience was not the financial recovery or business success, but rather the discovery of personal capabilities and resilience that had remained dormant during her comfortable and protected early life. The crisis had forced her to develop strength and independence that now enabled her to pursue ambitious goals with confidence that was based on demonstrated performance rather than inherited privilege. The audience response to Alexandra's presentation reflected the universal appeal of her transformation story, while acknowledging the specific insights and strategies that could be applied across diverse personal and professional situations. The combination of practical business guidance with inspirational personal narrative created engagement that extended beyond typical motivational presentations into actionable development planning. The question and answer session that followed her formal presentation revealed the depth of her expertise across multiple domains, including sustainable design innovation, business development strategy, crisis management, family relationship dynamics, and personal transformation methodology. Her ability to provide specific guidance while maintaining inspirational perspective demonstrated the comprehensive nature of her development through adversity. The media coverage that resulted from Alexandra's Harvard presentation amplified her influence beyond architecture and business communities into broader discussions about resilience, justice, and personal transformation that attracted attention from educational institutions, corporate leadership programs, and individual development coaches seeking case studies and methodologies for helping others navigate similar challenges. The book publication opportunities that emerged from this increased visibility enabled Alexandra to document her transformation methodology while providing detailed guidance that could benefit others facing family betrayal, financial crisis, or career transition challenges. The writing process required her to analyze and systematize insights that had been developed intuitively during her crisis experience. The international speaking engagements that followed her Harvard presentation created opportunities for Alexandra to share her insights with audiences across multiple continents, while learning about cultural variations in family dynamics, business development, and personal transformation that enriched her understanding of universal principles versus context-specific strategies. The consulting opportunities that developed through her enhanced professional visibility included working with established corporations that sought guidance about sustainable business practices while assisting emerging entrepreneurs who needed strategic planning support for building socially responsible enterprises. These engagements provided additional revenue while expanding her impact beyond direct client relationships. The academic appointments that Alexandra accepted included serving as visiting professor at Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture and adjunct faculty at New York University's Business School, where she taught courses that integrated sustainable design principles with entrepreneurship methodology. These educational roles enabled her to influence future generations of professionals while continuing her own learning and development. The industry transformation that resulted from Westfield's sustainable design's success included widespread adoption of affordable sustainability approaches that had been pioneered through Alexandra's projects, while inspiring competing firms to develop similar capabilities and commitment to social impact. Her innovations had become industry standards rather than competitive advantages. The policy influence that Alexandra's work had generated included consultation on federal legislation related to sustainable housing development, while providing testimony to congressional committees that were developing environmental regulations and affordable housing initiatives. Her expertise had contributed to systemic changes that would benefit communities and environment beyond her direct business activities. The philanthropic initiatives that Alexandra established through her business success included scholarship programs for architecture students from underserved communities, while supporting research into sustainable design technologies that could further reduce costs and environmental impact of affordable housing development. These investments created multiplier effects that extended her impact across multiple generations. The personal relationships that Alexandra had developed through her transformed life reflected her evolved values and priorities, while demonstrating how authentic connections based on shared principles and mutual respect provided more meaningful satisfaction than social relationships based on inherited status or financial advantage. The family dynamics that had emerged in the aftermath of Christopher's conviction included gradual reconciliation with her parents, who had eventually acknowledged their role in enabling his sense of entitlement, while expressing genuine pride in Alexandra's achievements and character development. However, these relationships remained fundamentally changed by the experiences they had shared. The perspective that Alexandra had gained about wealth and privilege through her transformation included understanding that inherited advantages could become obstacles to personal development when they prevented individuals from developing resilience and capabilities that adversity typically catalyzes. Her stolen inheritance had ultimately provided greater value through the growth it forced than it could have delivered through comfortable security. The motivational message that emerged from Alexandra's complete transformation story emphasized that devastating setbacks often contain opportunities for growth and achievement that exceed original aspirations when individuals respond with courage, strategic thinking, and commitment to principles, rather than accepting comfortable victimization or seeking revenge against those who have caused harm. The legacy that Alexandra was building through her continued success and influence demonstrated how personal transformation could generate benefits that extended far beyond individual achievement, while creating positive change that influenced industries, policies, and countless individual lives through direct and indirect impact. The stage was now set for Alexandra to continue expanding her influence and impact, while serving as a living example that adversity can become the foundation for achievements that exceed any comfortable alternative, when individuals possess the courage to choose growth over safety and principle over convenience. Her story had become a beacon of hope for anyone facing seemingly insurmountable challenges, while providing practical proof that transformation is possible when we choose to see obstacles as opportunities and setbacks as setups for unprecedented success. The unexpected telephone call that would elevate Alexandra's influence to international prominence arrived on a Tuesday morning while she was reviewing architectural plans for a revolutionary affordable housing development in Detroit. The caller identified herself as Dr. Amara Okafor, director of the United Nations Human Settlements Program, extending an invitation that would transform Alexandra's regional success into a global platform for addressing humanity's most pressing urban development challenges. Dr. Okafor explained that the UN had been monitoring Westfield's sustainable design's innovations in affordable sustainable housing with growing interest, as urban populations worldwide faced unprecedented challenges related to climate change, resource scarcity, and social inequality. Alexandra's demonstrated ability to create housing solutions that simultaneously addressed environmental sustainability, economic viability, and social equity had attracted attention from international development specialists seeking scalable approaches for implementation across diverse cultural and economic contexts. The specific opportunity that Dr. Okafor presented involved leading a multi-year initiative to develop sustainable housing prototypes that could be adapted for implementation in rapidly growing cities across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where traditional development approaches had proven inadequate for addressing the scale and complexity of urbanization challenges. The project would require Alexandra to collaborate with international teams while navigating cultural, regulatory, and resource constraints that exceeded anything she had encountered in North American markets. The magnitude of this opportunity created both excitement and apprehension as Alexandra contemplated expanding her impact from successful regional business development to addressing global challenges that affected millions of people living in conditions that demanded innovative solutions combining technical excellence with cultural sensitivity and economic pragmatism. The potential for meaningful impact was enormous, but the complexity and responsibility were equally daunting. The initial project phase would involve Alexandra spending 6 months working directly with local architects, engineers, and community leaders in 5 different countries to understand how sustainable design principles could be adapted to diverse climatic conditions, cultural preferences, available materials, and economic constraints, while maintaining the essential characteristics that made affordable sustainability achievable. The research methodology that Alexandra developed for this international work emphasized collaborative learning rather than imposing predetermined solutions, recognizing that sustainable innovation required understanding local knowledge and community needs that external experts could easily overlook or misunderstand. This approach reflected lessons learned from her own transformation about the importance of authentic relationships and genuine understanding rather than superficial solutions. The first international assignment took Alexandra to Lagos, Nigeria, where she worked with local architects and community organizations to understand how sustainable design principles could address the specific challenges of tropical climate conditions, limited infrastructure development, and diverse economic capabilities within rapidly expanding urban populations. The learning experience exceeded her expectations while challenging many assumptions about universal applicability of design solutions. The collaboration with Nigerian professionals revealed innovative approaches to natural cooling, renewable energy integration, and community-centered space planning that had evolved through decades of creative problem-solving under resource constraints that would have overwhelmed conventional development approaches. Alexandra's role shifted from expert consultant to collaborative learner as she discovered that effective international development required humility and genuine curiosity rather than technical superiority. The housing prototypes that emerged from the Lagos collaboration incorporated traditional materials and construction techniques with modern sustainable technologies in ways that created affordable solutions, while respecting cultural preferences and supporting local economic development through employment and supply chain opportunities. These designs demonstrated that sustainability could enhance rather than compromise cultural authenticity and community cohesion. The second international assignment brought Alexandra to Mumbai, India, where the density and complexity of urban development created entirely different challenges related to space optimization, infrastructure integration, and community engagement within established urban environments that required adaptive solutions rather than greenfield development approaches. The collaboration with Indian architects and social workers introduced Alexandra to innovative approaches for vertical gardening, rainwater harvesting, and community resource sharing that maximized environmental benefits within severely constrained physical spaces, while strengthening social connections that supported community resilience and mutual assistance networks. The Mumbai project developed multi-story housing designs that incorporated shared spaces for community activities, food production, and resource management, while maintaining private family areas that respected individual needs and cultural preferences. These solutions demonstrated how sustainable design could strengthen community bonds while addressing practical needs for affordable housing in high-density urban environments. The third international assignment took Alexandra to São Paulo, Brazil, where she worked with local professionals to address challenges related to steep terrain, irregular development patterns, and integration with existing informal settlements that required sensitive approaches to community development and infrastructure improvement without displacing established residents. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.